Good morning. It's Wednesday, February 3rd. I'm Jason Stanton. I serve as senior pastor at First Lutheran in Onalaska, Wisconsin. This is my morning musing for today. It's rooted in day 17 of our racial equity challenge, which suggests that you watch the film The Hate You Give, based on the young adult novel by Angie Thomas. I know my daughter, who's a sophomore in high school, she loved this book. I haven't read the book. I also haven't seen the movie. I'm just admitting that because I didn't make the time to watch the whole movie for today. But the best part about our racial equity challenge is some days like today, there's options. So it says, if you don't have time for the movie, option 2 is to watch a series of videos with Emmanuel Acho, 10 minutes each. So that's what I did. I watched the first one of those. And it's called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. And there he is in a very well-lit space. And he just speaks right into the camera. And he takes on a number, just in this first talk, it was amazing, the number of questions that he addresses. He starts by saying, in order to stand with us, you have to be educated on issues that pertain to me so that you can feel the full level of pain. It reminds me, a couple morning musings ago, I brought up Bishop Eaton, Elizabeth Eaton, and how she speaks to her point being, nothing's probably really going to change for as long as white people don't feel the pain that people of color and marginalized people feel. And so that's really echoed here. Listen to my perspective so that you can have full understanding. And then he says, if the white person is your problem, he's speaking from his own perspective, then only the white person will be the solution. So he's seeking to increase the levels of compassion among white people because he believes that's what's ultimately going to lead to change. So that's kind of the thesis here is, if I can educate white people, then they will feel more compassion. If they feel more compassion, they will help facilitate the change that all of us need. Okay, so the questions he takes on, what I appreciate is he raises questions that I know are prevalent among white communities. And so the first and foremost question he takes on, I shouldn't say foremost, the first of a series of questions he takes on is rioting. I remember last summer, a lot of people asking, well, why, how do they feel like this is going to help them further their cause or gain sympathy? This is illegal. It's dangerous. They're burning their own communities down. What is this about? And so he brings up the Martin Luther King Jr. definition of rioting, that it's the language of people unheard. And so people who haven't been heard in any other way, this is what they resort to out of anger, though. And that's the point that I took from the conversation around this topic was that, and then he made the analogy that, sometimes when people feel pain, when they're hurt, they don't always express themselves thoughtfully. I remember a friend of mine, actually, after we lost a really big basketball game, a playoff game my junior year, he just punched the wall as hard as he could, broke his hand. Well, that wasn't smart. That was his own hand. Why would he do that? Because he was angry. He was frustrated. A lot of things are done and said that aren't real thoughtful in the midst of anger and frustration. And a riot would be an example of anger and frustration on a community scale. Now, does that mean, as Emmanuel Acho says in this post, it's not that he condones the rioting, but he urges all of us to understand. That's where it's coming from. It's not a thoughtful, malicious intent that here's how we're going to gain people to understand us is by doing this. Instead, it's just an expression of anger. Like, hello, you're not hearing me in any other way. You're not seeing what we're experiencing. And so this is what happens. Then he takes on white privilege. Why does it exist? And then he makes the analogy of it's like white people have a head start. Like, yeah, black people go, but they're already 200 meters behind the white people in front of them. And the line he said that really resonated with me was, your skin color hasn't contributed to the difficulties in your life. As difficult as your life has been, because, I mean, as a white person, I know all of us white people, we know life can be really hard. We all have our own challenges. But our challenges have not been rooted in our skin color. And that's privilege. I get to live a life unconscious of my race. Most days I do not think about the fact that I'm white and how that's going to affect the way when I can go to a store, or when I can go for a jog, or where I can go for a jog. Like that doesn't have to go through my head. That's privilege. And then he takes on the N word. Why do black people get to say it, but white people cannot? I really appreciated this answer. He talks about how black people get to take a word that was meant to be a word of oppression. They get to take that word from white people and turn it into a term of endearment. That word, the N word, means hate, but black people get to redefine that word. That's how he talked about it. That's helpful. I know that I'm not ever to have that word come out of my mouth. I know that. But now I understand why someone who is black would use that word, because they're reframing that word. They're taking ownership of something that was used on them. So that's helpful. That's helpful to me. There were a couple more issues that he takes on. I wanted to lift this up, that just hearing where he's coming from, the whole thing was very helpful to opening my mind, instead of just being like, well, here's my opinion on rioting, and here's what I think about white privilege already, and here's, they shouldn't be saying that word. How many people in our lives do we know who are black, who have shared this perspective with us? I think for most white people, this is the kind of stuff we just don't have access to, or we don't, choose to have access to. And so that's what the 21-day challenge is about. Give yourself access to these other perspectives, that you may grow compassion, that you may then feel pain, that change could happen for everyone's sake. It's a way to love our neighbor. And so I encourage you to find the YouTube post and take 10 minutes to hear another person's perspective, to keep faith alive.